Good evening. It is 8 p.m. We will call the study meeting of April 18, 2022 to order. Mr. Morgan will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Good evening. This is a study meeting. The items on tonight's agenda will not be voted on this evening, but will receive motions for either an approving, a denying, or a referral to a committee of the whole. Those motions will be carried over to the regular meeting of May 2nd, 2022. I will note that the agenda for that meeting, the 1944th regular meeting, will be set in part tonight, and there may be other items added as well. We have 6 members of the council here with us this evening. Ms. McIntyre is unable to be here due to professional obligations, but she sends her best. At this time, we will go to audience communication. Does anybody in the audience wish to address the council at this time in regards to an item that is not on the agenda? There appears to be no audience communication. We'll move on to council announcements. Any council announcements? There appear to be none. So we will start with the agenda. To everybody's good fortune this evening, we have 28 items on the agenda, so we will try to move along as fast as we possibly can while doing our due diligence. Item number 1 is a request for designation as a nonprofit organization coming to us from Gail Wilcox of Anastasia and Katie's Coffee Shop, as required by the state of Michigan to obtain a charitable gaming license to allow for a raffle fundraiser in the future. Good evening, ma'am. State your name and address for the record.
Hello, I am not Gail Wilcox, but I am here to represent Anastasia and Katie's. My name is Andrea. I'm Ian Edgar's mom. He was here a few weeks ago. Anastasia and Katie's is located at 19215 Merriman Road in Livonia, just north of 7 Mile on the west side of Merriman, next to Angels, Saints, and Things. I know you all know who we are. But for the TV audience, if you are unfamiliar with us, we are a small 501c3 nonprofit founded in 2018. And Anastasia and Katie's is the first employment program. And we are on a mission to create inclusive employment for people with developmental disabilities. And we have great coffee, great sandwiches, and great employees.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I thought you
Okay.
were finished.
A few weeks ago, you approved us for a car show to be held on Saturday, May 14th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And I am here today seeking approval for a gift basket raffle license to be added to that approval.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Toy?
I'll offer an approving so that they can have their gift basket raffle and do great things for people that they are serving.
Thank you, Ms. Toy. Is that for consent?
Yes, please, if I
Any
may.
objections from the council? Any audience communication? I see none. So you have an approving motion for the consent agenda, which means that you do not have to come back to the next meeting.
Okay?
And we thank you for coming this evening, and thank you for the good work as well.
Okay, and in order for us to get that by the 14th, do we need to do a non-veto letter, or?
We will make a note to the administration to provide a non-veto letter.
Okay.
Thank you for the
Awesome.
reminder.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Have a great night.
You too. Item number 2 is the reappointment of John Hiltz to the Livonia Plymouth Road Development Authority, coming to us from the Office of the Mayor for a 3-year term that will expire on May 16 of 2025. Ms. Thomas?
Good evening, Council. John Hiltz is a professional registered engineer and is the Executive Director and Chairman of OHM Advisors. He is very versed on infrastructure issues, including transportation and landscape architecture. He's also a proud graduate of the University of Michigan. John has been a member and past president of the Plymouth Road Development Authority since 2005 and sits on several boards and commissions throughout the state. He is a proud Livonia resident for more than 28 years, is married, has 3 children, all grads of Livonia Public Schools, and 6 grandchildren. And here he is.
That's the sympathy vote.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. My business address is 34,000 Plymouth Road. Also, as you mentioned, I'm a resident, but I appreciate the opportunity that I've had to serve the city in the capacity of, on the PRDA in the past, and I would welcome the reappointment.
Mr. President.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Donovic?
Thank you, Mr. President. I can't think of a better person for the PRDA. Your extensive background and history and just professionalism in what you do makes sense for that corridor. It's an important corridor in Livonia, and you have a lot of knowledge of Plymouth Road with your business being on Plymouth Road. So I'd like to offer an approving on consent if there's no objection from my colleagues, and thank you for your continued service to our community.
Any objection for consent? I see none. Any audience communication? I see none. You have an approving for consent. Thank you, Mr. Hiltz.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Item number 3 is the appointment of Martha Tashnik to the Zoning Board of Appeals from Councilmember Scott Barr to fulfill an unexpired term which will expire on July 12 of 2023. Mr. Barr.
Yeah, Mr. Jolly, thank you. It's my pleasure tonight to offer to council for your consideration Martha Tashnik for the opening on Zoning Board of Appeals that's been created by Joel Turbiak's resignation. Before turning attention to Martha, I just want to publicly thank Joel for his work on that board. I'm very proud to have appointed him to that. I think he's done an exceptional job. Anyone that knows Joel knows how thorough he is and how interested he is in city affairs. And while I have tremendous respect for the reasons why he's stepping off that board to just be able to focus more on his young family, I'm definitely disappointed for the city that that's what's happened, and perhaps we'll get him involved again in the future. But it does open up an opportunity for me to appoint his replacement, and I'm very proud to have appointed Martha Tashnik, gotten to know her pretty well over the last few years, and just find her to be someone who's very capable, and most importantly, for this position, someone who has an interest in getting more involved in understanding how our city works. And so that's just a great match as I talked to a number of people for this position, but would highly recommend her for council's approval.
Thank you, Mr. Barr. Ms. Tashnik, is there anything you'd like to say?
Well, thank you, Mr. President and council members. I'm just really grateful and excited for this opportunity, and I really appreciate Mr. Barr coming to me and presenting it to me. So I really look forward as a lifelong Livonia resident to taking on this challenge and contributing more to my community. Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mr. President,
Mr. Donovic.
I have one question for the petitioner or for Mrs. Tashnik.
Go ahead.
Ms. Tashnik, what is the best high school in Livonia?
So he's putting me on the spot now. For those who don't know, I have to say carry the shield because Mr. Donovic is an alum
Go
of Churchill,
Chargers.
and I am the math department chair at Churchill. So our paths have crossed there as well. But my children both graduated from Stevenson, and I did start my career at Franklin. So I do have the trifecta.
Well played.
Not to mention, I did teach also at Emerson and Holmes at the beginning of my career.
So I thought he was going to ask if you could retroactively change those grades for him.
While I did have Mr. Donovic's younger brother in my class, I never had the pleasure of him. So,
Pleasure.
or displeasure is what I've heard. But
You're going to fit in just fine. You have an approving for consent. Thank you very much. Good luck.
appreciate that.
Have a nice evening. You
Mr.
do not need to
Chair.
come back to the next meeting.
Mr. Chair, they forgot Bentley, just so you know. We did have a high school named Bentley in Livonia.
What is Bentley? What is this?
Bentley High School, sir, Bulldogs.
I'm gonna look it up.
All right, I'll just go, and we have no audience communication from Ms. Tashnik? We do not. All right, so item number 4 is a waiver petition from the Planning Commission, petition 2022020202, submitted by Livonia Budget Storage LLC, requesting to operate a truck and trailer rental business in conjunction with the existing climate-controlled indoor self-storage facility at 29150 7 Mile Road, on the north side of 7 Mile Road between Middlebelt Road and Parkville Avenue in the southwest quarter of Section 1. Mr. Taramina, will you be leading us off on this one?
I will, thank you. This is the former Toys R Us property on 7 Mile Road, the north side, just east of Middlebelt Road. Zoning is appropriate, C2 general business. The site is approximately 4.5 acres in size. The building on the site is over 81,000 square feet. They are seeking approval to operate a U-Haul truck and trailer rental operation. As you know, this is treated as a separate waiver use. The waiver use for the indoor climate control facility was approved in August of 2020. This is coming to you with a recommendation from the Planning Commission. They are suggesting that 20 of the spaces along the west side of the parking lot within the secured portion of the site be available for a combination of cargo vans, panel trucks, and trailers that would be operated through U-Haul. The issue that we spent considerable time discussing was the use of the front parking lot for this purpose. Planning Commission felt that any trucks stored there could be done after hours, but when the business is back in operation from 10 till 9 p.m., those trucks should be moved from the front of the site to the secured portion of the parking lot, making those spaces available for customers. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Grisco, your name and address, please.
Brandon Grisco with the law firm Fossil and Bond, business address 41700 6 Mile Road in Northville Township.
What would you like to add, sir?
I'm here representing Livonia Budget Storage, the owners of the property that seek to operate the U-Haul business here. Mr. Termina did an admirable job presenting it. As you see along the west side, we're proposing to be able to store up to 15 U-Haul type vehicles, and along the north end of the property there, 5 additional vehicles. The only thing, I guess, at this point is that we're requesting the council allow us to park vehicles in the front as well, which the Planning Commission did not feel was appropriate, but which we are hoping that the council will consider. You see, we're only designating 2 spots potentially for the parking of U-Haul vehicles. So 15, 5, and then the 2 in front would be 22 total, whereas the Planning Commission had limited us to 20 total, and those only to be in the back of the facility behind the secured parking area.
Council?
Sure.
Ms. Toy?
So you're talking about 2 parking places in the front? Is that what I heard you say?
That is correct.
Okay. Mr. Chair, in reviewing the Planning Commission and what they had to say, and also now with these 2 other parking places, I would propose to offer an approving with the additional 2 parking places in, as well as what the Planning Commission described in there as well. So, in other words, an approving resolution with the additional 2 spots.
Thank you, Ms. Toy. Mr. Barr?
Yeah, Mr. Grisco, the purpose for the additional 2 spots is what?
So there's a couple things. First of all, the limitation of only 20 vehicles on site, we were looking to have 22 total vehicles on site. So these wouldn't be all at the same time, by the way, because the vehicles are constantly being rented out and being returned and things like that. So it's not like at any given time you necessarily actually have 22 vehicles on site. This is really more just a maximum potentially. So the purpose is for the extra 2 vehicles. Additionally, the ability to have the staff be able to prep vehicles and park it up front in order to have it ready for people to come and pick up. Certainly just operational flexibility, generally speaking, and then also the ability to facilitate contactless vehicle pickup, which of course is available to some extent by allowing people beyond the gate. But of course, if we don't have to do that, we wouldn't necessarily choose to do that, depending on the circumstances.
So, okay, so that raises 2 questions for me. First of all, when you said prep for the vehicles, can you describe a little more detail what you mean by that? What does that prep involve?
So for example, when somebody comes to pick up a U-Haul type vehicle, there's the possibility that it's already prepped and ready to go and up front, right? And maybe they've made an appointment to come and pick up the vehicle versus having to search for the proper vehicle in back sort of thing, which is what I was referring to.
Is there anything about the Planning Commission's recommended resolution that prohibits you from parking vehicles there temporarily for that purpose? I guess my initial interpretation of that would be you're talking about like more or less permanent parking or overnight parking, but I would think on a temporary basis.
So the Planning Commission resolution actually was okay with overnight parking in the case where somebody, for example, dropped off a vehicle after hours and couldn't access the secured parking area. So the Planning Commission was okay with that. Once sort of daytime rolled around and staff is on site, the Planning Commission was requiring those vehicles then be moved to the back.
Okay, so my second question that raised will come to me in a moment. I got my first question answered. Okay, I'm drawing a blank, but I will ask this: the original 20 number. Is that what you took to plan? Like, where did that come from? Did Planning Commission just recommend that number, or is that what you originally
Planning
asked for?
Commission took the spots that we showed up front, eliminated them, and said, 20 is the number that's left.
Okay. I guess just I can understand the planning commission, oh, I know what my other question was gonna be. I knew it would come to me. So there's those 20 are behind a gate, you said,
Correct, which is open during business hours but is closed after business hours.
and so elaborate for me again what you mentioned, the contactless renting, or however you said it. Tell me
So
what,
U-Haul does have a contactless pickup system potentially that they could utilize, important sort of during the COVID era that we have, where people can come, find their vehicle, pick it up, all without having necessarily to have contact with anybody inside the business.
but during business hours, is there anything about the original planning commission resolution that would keep you from doing that? Because they would have access to that side lot, right? During business hours?
Correct, yeah, simply, I think simply as described, the lack of ability, I suppose, to keep a vehicle up front that somebody would potentially be able to access. So then they'd have to go into the back lot area, park, find their U-Haul vehicle. I think the point being that we think it promotes efficiency to be able to put those vehicles up front.
Okay. Did the planning commission consider, and I did look at the minutes, but I don't recall this detail, did they consider these 2 spots and say no to it? Or is this a new ask that
No,
you're
no,
asking?
these spots were shown on the plans that were presented to
And
the
they did
planning
not-
commission. That's correct.
Okay. I appreciate the reason for the ask, but I also understand where the planning commission's coming from, and just, we already have, and as you know, and I've talked to you and the owners of this property before, had the privilege of attending your ribbon cutting. It's a beautiful facility. I think it's great for over there, but it is a different type of use. There was already concern about putting this type of use over there, and I can understand some of the concerns with allowing the U-Hauls out in front. I think there's, from an advertising perspective, which you didn't mention that, but naturally, there's some benefit for that for you, which is fine. I think there's plenty of visibility already with what's shown on that people will know that it's a U-Haul facility. I think I'm most comfortable with what the planning commission recommended, and in addition to the resolution that's already on the table, I'd offer an approving of the planning commission resolution as is.
Okay.
Thanks, Mr. Grisco.
Thank you.
Anybody else from the council? I think Mr. Donovic indicated earlier he wanted to speak first. So
Thank you,
Donovic.
Mr. President. So I think this is
Go ahead.
Sorry.
I think this permitted use, it does make sense. This is a storage facility. Naturally, when people are storing household items, whatever they're storing, they're going to utilize U-Hauls. I think it makes sense. So I don't have an issue with the U-Hauls. My understanding is these U-Haul vehicles are going to be your new vehicles, not maybe a rusty old U-Haul truck.
That's correct. Actually, I think Jerry may speak to this eventually, but I believe the average U-Haul vehicle is only up to 2 years old or 2.5 years old or something like that. So these are new vehicles, state of the art.
And logistically, it does make sense to me having the availability to park 2 vehicles up front. I know what it's like. I mean, you have customers coming and going throughout the day, sometimes relocating one of the vehicles to the side of the building and having customers drive through the building, through the fence and yard, trying to access those vehicles, figuring out which vehicle they want. I can understand logistically it could become a nightmare. So I'm okay with having 2 U-Haul vehicles up front. I understand. So I'm a little confused on the 2. Is there 2 separate motions being offered right now by Ms. Toy and Mr. Barr, or is there just one?
We have 2 motions, one that includes, and the 2 additional spots, and one that does not.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President, and thank you. That concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Mr. McCullough.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through the chair to the petitioner, just a couple quick questions and more for just verifying. I did read in the notes that vehicle maintenance and washing will be done off-site.
That's correct.
And then these 2 spots, they will be designated? Like there'll be specific spots, I'm assuming they'll be line lane marked, specific for these 2 U-Haul, the 2 spots that you're looking for up front?
I'm not
Will they be striped?
I'm not trying to forego the possibility that if they're out,
Okay.
somebody could potentially park there. I'm not saying that necessarily.
All right, I don't see an issue. I know obviously with technology and this contact list, that's kind of the new way of doing things. And the petitioner has done an incredible job with redeveloping that site. So I am fine with those 2 spots as well. Thank you.
Mr. Donovic.
Thank you, Mr. President. That begs the question, would the petitioner be amenable to marking 2 locations? I know that no matter what, customers are still going to pull into those spots, but is that something that the petitioner you think would possibly be amenable to, is putting 2 signs there, U-Haul, truck only maybe? Maybe that would help delineate from any future confusion, because again, I think parking two U-Hauls is okay with me, but maybe that's something that the petitioner is open to doing in the future.
Well, I'm just, I think if council's concern is that there would be vehicles parked there all the time, then Designating it as U-Haul only would only increase that possibility. So, I suppose we'd be open to a discussion of it. I don't know that it necessarily helps what we're trying to advocate for here, but.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, no additional comments from the council. Any audience communication in regards to item
So
number?
one of the partners for the business actually would like to speak, if it's okay with council.
Sure.
Okay. Sorry about that. We're all set. Thank you.
Thank you. Audience communication on item number 5, or excuse me, number 4. There is no audience communication, so the good news is you have 2 approvings, one that includes the spots, one that does not, that will be considered on May 2nd of 2022. Okay, but you're all set this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, council.
Item number 5, waiver petition from the Planning Commission. Petition 2022020203, submitted by Tissio Architects, Inc., on behalf of Plymouth Auto Sales, requesting to operate a used car dealership with repair facilities and outdoor display of vehicles at 36534 Plymouth Road, on the north side of Plymouth Road between Levan and Market Street in the southwest quarter of Section 29. Mr. Toromina, kick us off here.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is property located on Plymouth Road. It's just west of Levan. The site is roughly 2.5 acres in size, 290 feet of frontage along Plymouth Road. The zoning is C2 General Business. The site has a 12,000 square foot building located on it, and it was in 2011 when City Council granted Dick Scott's Freedom Power Sports approval to operate a motorcycle dealership. At this location, there was outside sales and display permitted as part of that waiver use. That does not carry over for the proposed used vehicle operation that is proposed this evening. That falls under a different section of the zoning ordinance, and that is what the Planning Commission reviewed at its meeting last month and is recommending approval for this project. The current layout of the site, and I'll just go to the aerial photograph, you'll see that the parking lot in this case is on the west side of the building, the main parking lot that is located here. That handles maybe 20 or 30 vehicles. That will be expanded in size to accommodate roughly 88 vehicles that would be used for display purposes. The city has several special requirements as they apply to new and used vehicle dealership operations, including the setback of those cars that is being complied with. There are other requirements relative to landscaping. The petitioner is complying also with the frontage requirements for the landscaping. In terms of customer parking, spaces would be designated both for customers of the dealership as well as the repair operations. A portion of this building would be used for that purpose. There are 4 service bays proposed, and there are separate parking requirements for that. This plan actually shows how the parking would be separated between the vehicle display, which is shown, which is not colored, I should say, this beige color, which indicates customer parking for the dealership, customer parking behind the building for the repair business that would operate there. And then in the back of this property, you may be familiar with it, it's a gravel parking lot, and it's there where the petitioner proposes to fence this area off, use it for vehicle inventory storage, as well as employee parking, which is shown here in the blue, and then in yellow, and then additional parking that would be available for some office space on the second floor of this building. That space has not been leased out. It's just, he's just indicating that should it ever be utilized, that there would be adequate parking behind this building for that purpose. With the expansion of the parking lot, they are going to be required to install stormwater management. That'll be in the form of an underground system. It'll be located beneath the gravel parking lot. Planning Commission, as I indicated, is recommending approval. They are limiting the waiver to this petitioner only, and should there be a change of operators, would have to come back before council for approval. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Toy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the Planning Commission is correct on this one as well. I think that they've reviewed the site. business is getting harder and harder to conduct anymore, and to draw certain businesses here and there, and our planning department and others do a fine job in our city to try and accommodate people that come in. And I would say this is a vast improvement, and it will lend itself to a very healthy environment down there. And I applaud the petitioner for bringing this forward, and I ask for an approving resolution.
Thank you, Ms. Toy. Mr. Tormina, quick question. So this is a waiver petition.
Correct.
Is the site plan incorporated with this as well, or will we see a site plan come back to us separately?
No, we reviewed all the details with respect to the site plan, so the two were brought together.
Okay. So any comments would have to be made at this time in regards to the site plan?
Yes, please.
Okay. Mr. Donovic?
Thank you, Mr. President. To the petitioner, the service bays are going to be inside, correct?
That is correct. Excuse me, Ben Tissio Architects, 19815 Farmington Road. Those service bays are primarily for minor work on it. It isn't as if they're going to overhaul an engine or do some major work on it. This is for people to come in and want their oil changed, filters, rotate their tires, some of the minor work. This is not intended to be a repair shop.
Thank you, I appreciate that clarification. To echo my colleagues, Councilman Toy, I do think this is an improvement to the building. Just looking at the site plan, to Mr. Jolly's point, we are looking at the site plan as well, and I do think that this is an improvement to that building. So my question also was, is the rest of the building, I know you're doing the wood canopy, the composite material, but is the rest of the building also going to be changed, or is that going to be
Yes.
the brick?
No, the proposal is to take off the mansard roof that's there now with the shingles. We're going to put up a vertical facade that would incorporate composite wood framing. It's on the site plan, on the drawings. It's going to be a darker wood. The whole building will be repainted. The red striping will be gone, plus new signage. The existing ground sign itself will remain. We'll just take out the panels and replace it with the new tenant information on that. So we wouldn't need any upgrades or anything to the sign other than replacement of the panels. And half the site is gravel, half the site is grass. This is all going to be new pavement, and as Mark pointed out, we're going to have some underground stormwater in the back. The fencing area between the back of the lot where the cars will be stored is going to be a vinyl fence, so you cannot see through it, so the vehicles won't be visible if you're on site in the front.
Well, thank you, sir, and I appreciate the workmanship, and looking forward to this potentially happening. Thank you.
Anybody else from the council? Any audience communication in regards to item number 5? Was this for consent?
Sure.
Okay, we'll put this on consent. That's approving for consent. You do not have to come to the next meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item number 6, a request to amend Council Resolution 258-21, Department of Civil Service, to amend job descriptions and increase wages for temporary part-time staff in the Department of Parks and Recreation from budgeted funds. Good evening.
Hello, everyone. I'm Janine Leibel on behalf of the Civil Service Commission. We're here to request that you approve these changes. They're being put into place to allow us to address seasonal employees, retention of employees who have been with us last summer or last season, bringing them back as experienced employees, as well as just the general staffing shortage that we see, especially with our Parks and Recs Department.
For clarity and public understanding here, can you kind of detail exactly what these changes are in regards to wage changes?
Sure. Some of the wage changes would be put into effect through step changes. So for example, we have 4 positions that we'd like to bump up a level. From level 3 to level 4 would be climbing wall belayer and an intern. From level 4 to level 5 would be a camp supervisor and a front desk 2 position. Those are people that come in and really make our programs hum. So we like to make sure that we can bring them back at a higher rate.
Okay.
Another thing that we'd like to change is the minimum requirement of hours worked in the past 12 months in order to be eligible for another step. Currently, it's at 225, and we'd like to move it to 125, so that way seasonal employees who aren't with us for the whole 52 weeks can get their hours in a shorter increments.
Okay. Council? Mr. Barr?
Janine, I'm curious, do you know, for these types of positions, who are your primary competitors for getting these people?
Well, for example, if you were talking to someone like a lifeguard, that would be anyone from other municipalities as well as Lifetime Fitness or anywhere else that has a swimming pool. A lot of these, for example, a lot of the employees come in, they're college students that come home during the summers or available for the summertime work. So we're trying to bring them back and get them to stick with us.
And this is only summertime work, you said?
I wouldn't limit it to summertime work. I know there's a lot of seasonal work that's impacted, but those could be also potentially full-time positions.
Okay. And what is, I guess the reason I was asking about the summertime work is I was trying to get a sense of what the staffing levels are currently around these jobs, but if they're seasonal
Currently about
work.
60%.
Ted just knows he has a lot to ask for tonight, so he was spreading the wealth, wasn't he?
Yeah, I just wanted to get a little warm up here. Thank you, Councilman Barr. Stretching out a little bit prior to the main event. Ms. Liable said it correctly. We're probably about 60% of full staff. Last year, when I came and initially asked for these increases, which council thankfully approved, we were at about 35% staffing. So we're by no means full staffed. And Councilman Barr, when you asked who our competitors are and what they're paying, I mean, we see it every day. It's McDonald's, it's Burger King, it's Arby's, it's every single employer that is paying significantly more than they were paying 2 years ago. Canton, I can tell you, redid their wage scale much the way we did on a temporary basis last year and then came back earlier this year with permanent changes. Their lowest paid position starts at $14 an hour. They do $1 increases every single year. I believe their highest paid part-time position is as high as 20 right now at an entry level. So when you ask, I mean, where we're at, I mean, these certainly are significant changes and we don't take these lightly because these have real financial impacts on our department. But we are still, this just puts us in the same game. We're by no means the highest paid. We're still probably closer to the lower end of the spectrum on pay. But at least we have stabilized the situation and we expect to have a pretty normal summer season. And again, you asked if these positions were just summer, and no, they're not just summer. They are year-round positions that we see all the time at the rec center, from building supervisors to front desk staff to our indoor lifeguards to climbing wall attendants. They are with us throughout the entire year.
Mr. Chair?
Okay, I understand that reality, and I'm just curious to see who you got to come present item number 13 tonight, so we'll look forward to that.
There's so many, I can't even think what item 13 is. We're at 6 right now.
Thanks to both of you for answering my questions. Thanks.
Ms. Toy?
Thank you so much. If I may, to the petitioner, you're requesting $13 an hour, am I reading this correctly?
I believe the lowest paid position would be still at $12.37 an hour.
And I think your point is well taken, both of you, because if you go to any fast food restaurant, you're looking at $17. I mean, you know, so I'm wondering if we're just pricing this a little too low. I'm not one to like to give away our money, not that we do that here, but I'm just saying, is it gonna be enough so that you don't hire somebody and then they leave you in another couple weeks for another job that's paying $17 an hour flipping burgers or something? You know what I mean? I know they're not the same kind of job, but I'd be open to your suggestions, perhaps is a little bit bump up, if you will.
Well, Councilwoman Toy, I will caution us on that. I mean,
Please. Yes.
you know, certainly someone can make more money someplace else and without question, but we do offer significant benefits with our job. Again, flexible schedule. I like to think we have a fun environment. You also, if you work 2 shifts a month, you effectively get a rec center membership for free. So there are some benefits that, you know, I would think, you know, McDonald's wouldn't provide, and is certainly a much different working environment than what we have. Also, I mean, to give you an idea, to increase these significantly, we're already in the hole $350,000 from where we were a year ago with part-time wages. That we have no real way right now until I get to item, whatever the item is at the agenda later, but we have no real answer for making up those expenses. You know, for that's a significant hole in the budget. You know, again, in a $7.2 million budget, $50,000 operationally, we can patch that hole easily enough. But, you know, we get to $350,000 on top of, you know, we see the same cost increases that everyone sees. You know, for contractors doing work at the rec center, for our, you know, for our maintenance contracts, we see those. For our utilities, we see those. And again, our full-time wages have gone up too as well. Every single year we have cost of living adjustments. So since 2017, we're well over, you know, probably $600,000-$700,000 in the hole from where we were in 17 with wages and cost increases.
No, and I appreciate your answers to that. Maybe the issue should be studied even deeper, if you know what I'm saying. Maybe we need to take an overall look, not that I want to micromanage, but I know even in my own business, we've had to eliminate some of the kinds of things we did because of the economy and because of the costs and because of who we hire and how we have to hire now. It's a new normal, and we got to readjust some of the things. And I know you're very good at all that, but it's a deep problem, and it's going to continue, I have a feeling. I don't have a magic crystal ball here, but I keep, you know, like you said, everyone's having the same kind of issues, whether it's a municipality or a small business or whatever. So I don't know, maybe some of my colleagues have a better suggestion.
Well, and Councilwoman Toy, I don't
Please,
know, I don't
yes.
think this is a magic bullet by any means. This doesn't solve our problem. This simply moves us forward.
Sure.
And that's even all we did last year was ask to move ourselves forward, to be in the same game as everyone else.
Okay.
And give ourselves a chance. And I think this just furthers that, our
Yeah.
request before council.
Keep in mind, I'm not against it. I'm just trying to see both short-term and long-term, if we can even do that. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Davis, you have 8 items after this, so I hope you're ready.
Trying to save my words here.
So I'll just make my own comments real quick, because it's a study meeting, right? So I'm in the rec center 6 days a week, between picking up kids at practices and, you know, potentially working out or something like that. One of the things that strikes me, first off, with your request, I can't think of anybody who deserves a recognition and a raise more than the belayer on the climbing wall. That seems to be a pretty important job. But to be honest with you, I know we've talked about this before. You know, sometimes going in and out as often as I do, I really wish the people, and we're considering some adjustments to the people we're talking about here, provided a little bit more of a welcoming atmosphere. A smile when somebody walked in, a hello. You know, you have a big footprint in terms of the city operation here. And a lot of people, the extent to which they're interacting with the city is through your department and the recreation center and stuff like that. And although you really do have a lot of great people, a lot of people do a tremendous job, and I'm not taking anything away from that. I think the welcome, a little hello and a smile goes a long way sometimes. I know you made some adjustments to the entry line, and I think it works out great. But when some of these people are going into like a private facility, the private facility has money on the line, so they're making sure that they're welcoming those people. So I think that's important to me. I think people should get what they need to be getting to be compensated for what they're doing, but I would stress that. Mr. McCullough?
Thank you, Council President. Through the chair to Mr. Davis. So my question on this is, the level 1 that I'm looking at $12.37, if you say you have a position, do they all start at level 1, or can some of them be at level 3, level 4? How's that work exactly?
Councilman McCullough, there are certain positions that are at level 1.
That's what it is.
Yes.
So my question to that is that $12.37, and if you use even your surrounding apples to apples, different municipalities, right there, you're down almost $2 compared to what everybody else is hiring at. And as much as I don't, you know, trying to be fiscally responsible, we want to make sure that we have the best employees and that you're not having to rotate and hire someone every 2 weeks, just like you say, is you train them and then they're off to somewhere else. Outside the fast food, I could see that, some of the amenities that you offer, a free rec center pass. I know of communities that are bordering us that give iPads as incentives at the end of the seasons to keep their staff. I truthfully think that it's low. If we want to, just as Councilman Jolly was saying, you want to provide that, well, I think we need to incentivize and provide a salary or a wage that is going to be advantageous for people to come in and want to work here and keep them. And I just don't see it at that level one. I think you're going to get a rotating and you're going to struggle, maintaining, and that takes us through 2023. I don't want to stop. If you're telling me right now that we have to approve this, or we're going to be in trouble from a hiring perspective, but I'd like to, again, maybe potentially study. I'm going to offer a committee of a whole on this item, just to take a different look. And I know that could be going back through different channels, but I don't know. I just think that we're way too low there.
Thank you, Mr. McCullough. Any other motions from the council? We have a referral to committee of the whole. I see no.
Is that the only one?
That is the only one, sir.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Davis and Ms. Leibel, does that create a hardship for you? You know the process of going to committee of the whole from a timing perspective. What does that do for you?
That will certainly impact the availability to get it through a committee of the whole and through a regular meeting. That potentially could impact our seasonal hirings.
When does this hiring, is this happening now?
Yes.
Yeah, my fiscal conservatism, but you make a strong case here. I understand what the market is doing, and I trust your expertise on this. I'm going to offer an approving for consideration as well.
Okay, we have two motions in approving and a committee of the whole. No additional motions from the council. Any audience communication on this item? I see none. We will see you back on May 2nd.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Item number 7, a request to renew software maintenance agreement with sole source provider from the Department of Information Systems with ESRI Inc. for the city's geographic information system for a period of 1 year from budgeted funds. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Council. Casey O'Neill, Information Systems Director. This item is our annual renewal for our GIS, or Geographic Information Systems, software maintenance. Our GIS system provides mapping functionality to several city departments, including engineering, DPW, planning, assessing, inspection, and fire, as well as several mapping applications on our city website. The total cost is $20,750 and is accounted for in budgeted funds, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. President,
Mr. Donovan,
I'd like to offer an approving on consent if there's no objection from my colleagues.
any objections, council? Any audience communication? Okay, you have an approving for consent on number 7.
Thank you.
Number 8, a request for authorization to purchase Centalone security software and SOC from Information Systems for a period of 3 years from budgeted funds. Mr. O'Neill?
This item is a purchase of the Sentinel-1 control security software for our city systems. This software will increase the city's network defense against ransomware and other cyber threats. This software will give us a stronger security platform, augmenting what we already have with our traditional antivirus software. Included with this as well is a 24/7 live security operations center, which will respond to threats that are found immediately without user intervention. The total cost is $24,600 a year, being purchased through our network consultant, Visicom Services. The first year of this software is accounted for in budgeted funds.
Council?
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Toy?
approving on consent.
Any objections from the council? Any audience communication? I see none. You have an approving for consent. Thank you, Mr. O'Neill. Item number 9, a request for authorization to waive the sealed bid process and purchase from sole source provider from the Livonia Public Library to add 3 study rooms, furniture on the 2nd floor, and a table for library conference room at the Bennett Civic Center Library from budgeted funds. Ms. Laporte, good evening.
Good evening. My name is Tony Laporte. I'm the library director. I'm here to request approval for some library upgrades, greatly needed. We've never had study rooms at the Bennett Civic Center Library, and we get requests for them probably every day. These 3 study rooms that we're requesting are glass. They do not go quite to the ceiling, so we don't have to do the HVAC, lighting and all of that. And then I'm also requesting tables and chairs for each room and a conference table for the Jenkins room upstairs because it's peeling. So I'm hoping that, we do have money in the budget. I'm hoping that you will see fit to approve this.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Toy,
I'll ask for an approving on consent.
any
Since it's budgeted funds.
any objections from the council? I see none. Audience communication? I see none. Ms. Laporte, you have an approving. I'm sure your wish list is much longer than this, so we'll
I'll
look
be
forward to that
back.
come at some point in the future. Thank you very much, ma'am.
I'll be back right now.
Oh, there you go. Item number, listen, I should have, number 10, request for authorization to waive the sealed bid process from sole source provider, Livonia Public Library, to replace shelving units for the youth nonfiction collection and the youth paperback collection at the Carl Sandburg Library from budgeted funds. Ms. Laporte.
Yes, this shelving unit was units. There's a lot of ranges of nonfiction shelves, and they were bad when I worked there many years ago, when I started out there. They're rusty and, you get little kids crawling around, and they're kind of dangerous too, I think. So we had replaced the picture book shelving a few years ago, and now we would like to replace this shelving so it's sturdy and clean and will match.
Council, Mr. Barr?
I have one question, Tony. Not being in this business, I'm sure there's a good answer for this, but you're waiving the no bid process because there's only one provider for this. I believe it's a brand of shelves, is that Warden? Why do we have to stick with that brand? Are there other?
Warden's been used in libraries for many, many, many years. It's sturdy, it lasts a long time. I'm sure that probably the shelving we have currently was probably Warden as well. They do chairs and tables. We've had the Warden chairs and tables in the Civic Center atrium for many years, and they're just very sturdy, and libraries usually go with Warden.
Okay, I look at the price tag, and again, not being in
I
this
know.
business, but $28,758 for 3 shelving units, or 3 shelving, if I understand correctly,
No,
or
it's more.
ranges.
33,000.
They're long. They're not just like little shelves. They're ranges of shelving.
Okay,
And I think that there's more than 3, and then there's the paperback section, so.
it says 3 new shelving ranges. Each range have 6 total sections, okay.
Oh, yeah, so there are
Okay.
6 sections of.
Okay,
yeah.
I mean, are there other competitors to Warden that provide this type of thing?
Not really that we've,
Not really is not a no.
no, I mean, there are probably people out there that do shelving, but for library shelving, which is, you need a sturdy shelving, because you get kids climbing up. You can't go to IKEA or, Wayfair, whatever. You have to get a good shelving unit.
So have we looked to see if other people
Oh,
provide
yeah,
this?
we've looked at, like Demco does shelving, and theirs is twice as pricey.
Okay. All right, I'm good, Mr. President.
Ms. Laporte, do you think if the council went to Home Depot and bought some wood, do you think we could, no?
Oh, jeez.
Do we have an emotion?
Mr. President,
I think Mr. McCullough beat you out there, Mr. McCullough.
I will offer an approving on consent.
Any objections from
I
the
do
council?
have a question.
Mr. Donovan?
Thanks, Mr. President. So if I'm reading the packet correct, the current shelving units are 40 years old?
Probably, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you, Ms. Laporte.
Any objections to consent? No objections. Any audience communication? I see none. You have an approving for consent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Item number 11, request for additional expenditure from the Department of Park and Recreation for the Sheldon Park Pool deck paving to close out the contract with Luigi Fernandi and Son Cement Company, Inc., in an amount not to exceed $6,026.55, and the total not to exceed amount of $61,887.55 from budgeted funds, referencing Council Resolution 114-21. Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Council President Jolly. Again, we are asking that council approve an additional expenditure for this project, Sheldon Pool Decking. This was approved last year prior to the season, work we needed to do to maintain that pool. Of course, we had every intention that we did open that pool for about a week based upon staffing. It wasn't anything physical with the structure, the decking itself. They did a good job. But we had additional work that needed to be done once the deck was removed. We had bonding, and then there was some additional material that needed to be added after a heavy rainstorm before pouring, which led us to this additional charge. We had hoped to bring this before council last year, as the project was completed last year. We didn't receive this billing until very recently, unfortunately, and forced to come back here and ask for additional funds for this.
Thank you, sir. Council?
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Toy?
I'll ask for an approving
Okay.
on consent.
Any objections from the council? Audience communication? I see none. You have an approving for consent on 11.
Thank you.
Item number 12, award of contract from Parks and Rec for the HVAC maintenance service at the Kirksey Recreation Center from June 1, 22 to May 31 of 2026 from budgeted funds. Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Council President Jolly. Ted Davis representing Parks and Recreation. We submitted bids with the assistance of the public DPW Public Service Division for HVAC maintenance contracts for the rec center. We received 5 companies' bids. We are asking that council award to the low bidder, RW Mead and Sons, which is our current service provider there, and we've had a good relationship with them. I'm happy to answer any questions council might have.
Mr. McCullough.
I'll be happy to offer an approving on consent.
Any objections from the council? Any audience communication? I see none. You have an approving for consent.
Thank you.
On 12, item number 13 is a request for fee increase from Parks and Rec for membership, daily pass, and 10 visit passes at the Kirksey Recreation Center and outdoor pool daily pass and seasonal passes. Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Council President Jolly. As Councilman Barr referenced earlier with regard to wage increases, this is really the same coin, just different halves of this. We obviously have significant cost increases at the rec center that started really last year. Our last fee increase was 2017, and we don't take these lightly. But we are in a position now where we, with part-time wages being our biggest line item, and these wage increases have significantly impacted our budget. And it might not be the end of these wage increases. We might simply be in the beginning, but we are to the point now where something needs to be done. Where right now these are, in some people's eyes, a significant increase. It averages out to about $3 per person per month, raising the fees at the rec center. There were some interesting things when we were reviewing these that we stumbled across. One was CPI, was Consumer Price Index. When the initial rec center fees, when we initially opened in 2003, an adult membership was $150 in 2003. CPI, just Consumer Price Index, raising it every year, the adult membership right now would be $300. That's not including inflation for this year. That's simply saying, starting this year, the membership would have been $300. We haven't even kept pace with inflation. The other one is, I'm sure if people have ever seen this, there's a Big Mac study based on the value of a currency, right? How much is your currency worth? What a Big Mac costs. We flipped it a little bit and we took, what did Big Mac cost in 2003? It's doubled since 2003. Fees, inflation, these things are all moving in a direction. I just read a Detroit news story that, inflation for this year is already at 8.5%. We are affected by this as well, and obviously we're asking for significant increases, and we hope the council considers this request. Happy to answer any questions council might have on this.
Mr. Barr.
Similar to earlier, I definitely understand the market realities, and you make fair points. I do have a few questions that I think are relevant to this.
Sure.
And first and foremost, Ted, where are we at from a membership standpoint? Relative to right before the pandemic.
Yeah, we bottomed out last September at about $88.50. We're now at, I don't count Silver Sneakers and Pure Fit and Optum Health because they pay on a per visit basis. But full paid memberships, EFT and annual, we're $11.05 and change right now.
Does that, like one family membership, does that count as one of those 11.5 or is that
that's-
6?
It's, if you have 6, it's 6.
it's
If I have
okay.
3, it's 3. That's the members. So it's not packages, we're counting total members.
Okay. And your peak was what?
Or peak
Well,
would have been.
peak would have been a long time
Yeah,
ago,
peak
right?
was a long time
Your
ago.
average, by
I mean, before leisure pool issues in, June of 19, let's say, we were at about 13.5.
okay.
Right before the pandemic, I want to say we were about 12.8, 12.9, somewhere in that ballpark.
You currently still, in the old gymnastics area, have all the equipment that used to be just in the one area and it's all
Yes.
spread out?
Yep.
Are there any plans to go back to the way that was before, so the gymnastics area can be used even, I know there's long-term different ideas for
Yep.
that, but even temporarily for other things, or is that gonna stay that way?
I don't know how anyone has an appetite to have their new best friend 3 inches away from them on a treadmill anymore. I mean, I think everyone's bubble kind of expanded, whether you consciously think about it or not, but
I guard guys on the basketball court just as tight as I always did, so.
it's not what I heard, Councilman Barr, but, I think the attempt is still there, I'll say that. I do think people's bubbles have naturally expanded a little bit. We are gonna reorganize and put out, if you look in the back of gymnastics, we do have equipment back there still kind of in storage. That's all gonna be put out. We actually are gonna close early on May 1. So in a couple weeks here, we're gonna close a little early. We have some movers out. We're gonna, reshuffle all the equipment, bring it out and kind of go from some of the equipment is 10 feet space, some of it is 6. We'll probably go to about 4 feet, I think right now is our plan, to get all the equipment out and around the facility. So I don't think really, we did spend them, obviously we carpeted that location. We carpeted the former gymnastics space. We actually just purchased larger TVs because people who utilized that space felt like they were somehow lesser than because the TVs were smaller than in the previous section of the Fit Hub. So I don't know what we would do in that space. We were using it occasionally for classes. The pickleballers loved it. But I think we fixed that with the new MAC gym flooring as well.
So just want to, and I've expressed this to you before, but as someone who's been a family member there for at least 15 years,
Sure.
You'll probably go check me on that, and if I'm wrong, you'll let me know. But one of the frustrations for me is with the rate at which those gyms are rented out to LJL and other things, it is rare that my family can come into the rec center and use the facility as we'd like to use it. Rare. And it's a major I get use out of it, with my morning basketball, early morning basketball. But as far as my family goes, we get almost no use out of it because almost every time that we come, there's somebody using the facility and we can't use it. I understand the market realities of this, but from that standpoint, I'm just gonna be blunt. You're not competitive. As far as my family's ability to use it. And we were just having the discussion recently about whether it makes sense for us to renew the membership beyond my single-use membership. So you make a strong case here. It's something that's a continual concern of mine, and I don't expect, if you have answers tonight, that's fine, but it's something that I hope we can rethink the usage of that. I played it was LJFL at the time, but growing up, and we had schools all over the city with facilities that we used. And to have a community asset like that we're selling memberships to, but gobbling up all the time to rent it out or lease it out, or I know we have an agreement with them and all that, it's just problematic for me.
Well, Councilman Barr, I would say there's always a balancing act when you're dealing with community groups and usage of a membership or a usage-based facility like the rec center where you're charging for use for it. We've cut down LJL's hours, so we have 2 gyms open. I think a lot of the play is simply we've seen a huge increase in demand. Our membership is down still from pre-pandemic levels. Our usage is higher than it was pre-pandemic. I don't have a really good answer for it, other than I think a lot of people are just making really good use of the facility now. We have this same issue when it regards to Livonia Community Swim Club. It's a balancing act. And I would never say that we have it perfect or that, we have all the answers. We certainly don't. We're always looking to optimize that balance, but Livonia Community Swim Club would take every single lane we have, every single hour. Bless you. Are you okay? Sure. But Livonia Community Swim Club would take every single hour we have from 4 o'clock until close every single day, every single lane. We could do that easily, but then, of course, we wouldn't be providing a service to lap swimmers. And there's certainly still a balancing act there. We rent them 5 lanes out, and there's 3 for the community to use, which some would say is enough. I think Livonia Community Swim Club would say it's enough, and maybe the members of the community would say it's not enough. A lot of times we get really issues with people wanting to share spaces, and I think that's one of the biggest things is, you know, lap swimmers, I'll say this, I've never seen so many people with an 8-foot wide lane that are so insistent on being alone in that 8-foot wide lane that's 25 yards long. You think you could fit a couple people in there, but, you know, I think, again, these are all things that we need to talk about maybe, and balancing acts.
Thanks.
Any motions from the council? Mr. McCullough?
Thank you, Council President. You know, this one is, it's a tough one. Obviously, we do not want to sit here and raise our rates. But I think it's fair to take in consideration that there hasn't been a rate increase since 2017. Inflation's higher than it's ever been. And we're not talking, you know, especially, you know, if I look at, you know, the rate that I'm spending right now, for a family, it's going to go up $96 a year for the, you know, the services that we do get. I look at the other side of the coin, and, you know, if I may, to Mr. Davis, what happens if we did not approve this? I mean, you're negative in capital. This is going to have a consequence. We need this.
We wouldn't be negative in capital. We'd have to come up with some other way to balance. Because again, since I've been here, I've always been told the general fund will never bail out the recreation center. We have a Parks and Recreation millage that offsets the expenses. If we face, you know, a fiscal year deficit, we are the ones that have to make that up either through our 208 unexpended fund balance, which we certainly can to a certain extent, or we would have to cut our operational expenses.
By doing so could lead to potentially a day that you would have to close in theory. I mean, those are different options that are on the table, I would imagine.
Well, I can tell you that Canton is still suffering with their membership as one community, where we're back about 85%. Canton's at about 60%. They have no plans to open on Sundays. They've been closed Sundays since they reopened the facility. And that's part staffing and that's part, you know, revenue for them and managing expenses. But I would say that a lot of options would be on the table if we don't have some sort of increase, some sort of revenue, additional revenue. I mean, I would, again, at item number 6, council was saying the raises or the part-time wages we were prepared, you know, we were hoping to have approved here were insufficient based on the current market. And yet, we bring forth an agenda item here that's going to balance our books. It's, you know, a pay-to-play situation. We're not raising taxes on anyone. You're a member of the rec center. You're not a member of the rec center. Certainly, we wish everyone was, but I understand if they're not. You know, to offset that additional expense, and we're somehow having you know, we're questioning that course. So, I mean, that's the situation we're in right now, and I understand these are tough decisions to make, but here we are.
Yeah, and going back to your reference to the last item, that might have made that 392 go up a little bit potentially for the offset. So that's all the questions I have for right now.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Donovic?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Davis, if I'm looking at this correctly, about the average monthly payment would be roughly $25 a month if you're paying monthly, as opposed to currently it is $22 a month.
That would be for for an adult, yes.
Yeah, the average, and then seniors right now is $19.25 a month, and that would be about $23 a month if they were on the monthly basis.
Correct.
Well, you look at other gyms around town, and I think that's pretty on par with most of your private gyms around town.
I still think we're low.
And I would make the assumption that we offer a lot of great services at our rec center, that some of your local gyms around town that are charging that much or higher, won't necessarily give our residents at a rec center. Thanks, Mr. Davis.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
Ms. Toy,
did we have a motion yet?
we do not have a motion.
Well, I don't like fee increases. They're like taxes, no offense. But for what you said earlier, that's why, I like to look at that bigger picture, Ted and, or Mr. Davis. But I'm gonna offer an approving, on this increase. I don't often do it, but with us being in debt in this regard, if this helps, then let's do it. And I think as my colleague, Mr. Rob over there, just pointed out, we are in competition with some of those private entities, in that regard. The heck of a walk from that parking lot. I mean, really, we need a little golf cart. No, but I'm just joking with you. But I'll offer an approving, Mr. Chair, and I'm sure that's going to probably be on regular unless my colleagues want otherwise. I'll take the hose.
Mr. Barr,
Yeah, I would like it on regular, but I do want to just say I probably came across a little harsh earlier when I said you're not competitive for my family. My family loves the rec center. Ted knows that. There are some frustrations, as I expressed earlier, but I do understand relative to people's other options. I mean, this is not a crazy request. And my request to have it on regular is not so much, don't see that as a condemnation on it. To be honest with you, I'm likely to support this. I just think that this is something that's of enough importance to the community that it probably belongs there. And we got to give the Observer the opportunity to do their headline like they do every time we do this at City Council votes to raise fees on rec center. So, thanks.
Mr. Davis, you have an approving on item 13 for the regular agenda. I'll just note very quickly, I think it's still a good value. The rec center is a community asset. It's a great resource that's available for families, particularly in Michigan where there's not a whole lot to do in the winter. And if you look at this in light of the added value to the membership as well, allowing members to use the outdoor pools as an included perk in their membership, I think it makes a lot of sense, and I look forward to supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 14, award of bid, Parks and Rec, for the Alexander Blue House roof replacement at Greenmead from budgeted funds.
Thank you, Council President Jolly. We actually went to bid on this project twice. Historic Preservation Commission was kind enough to approve an alternative material. It's called cedar. Bids came back initially, and we thought they were incredibly high. We went back out to bid and asked for a replacement with cedar roofing material, and they came back higher. So we are asking that, yes, it worked out that way. So we are asking that council approve the contract in the amount of $115,360 to Weather Seal Home Improvements for the installation of a composite roofing material called cedar, which has a 50-year warranty and is actually the first truly alternative material that the Historic Preservation Commission has approved.
Great.
Mr. McCullough.
I'd be happy to offer an approving on consent. I know this product, and I'm happy that we actually have a synthetic. I wish we had this when we were looking at the other roof, but no, this, it's got a 50-year warranty. It's a LEED certified product. Well done.
Any objection from the council for consent? Nope. I see none. Any audience communication? I see none. We'll move on to item 15, award of bid from Parks and Rec for the Chilani parking lot expansion from budgeted funds. Mr. Davis.
Thank you, Council President Jolly. We received 2 bids for this project. This was in the initial park plan that we did with regards to the barrier-free playground and the senior playground we are adding there. The additional parking lot, Ferdinandi and Sons came in at a higher bid. Nagel Paving was the low bid. We are asking that council approve Nagel Paving in the amount of $103,290 for the parking lot expansion at Chilani Play Area.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Barr.
Offer approving for consent if there's no objection.
Any objections from the council? I see none. Any audience communication? I see none. We'll move on to item 16, award of bid from Parks and Rec for the Chilani gathering area from budgeted funds.
Thank you, Council President Jolly. So this is meant to be a center gathering area between the two playscapes. We'll eventually add to the north pavilion and comfort station there as well. But this is, again, completing that first phase of this park plan. We're asking the council award the bid to Rotundo Construction in the amount of $150,508.50.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Barr.
I'll likewise offer approving for this for consent if there's no objection.
Any objections from the council? Audience communication? There is none. We'll move on to item 17. Award of bid from Parks and Rec for the leisure pool UV replacement at the Kirksey Rec Center from budgeted funds.
Thank you, Council President Jolly. A UV system, so everyone is aware, is an ultraviolet system that actually kills or destroys chloramites. So when you walk into a pool area and you smell the chlorine, you're smelling that. A well-functioning UV system actually eliminates that smell, makes it for a safer breathing environment for everyone, just makes a more pleasant experience, and helps us, honestly, with our water chemistry as well. We're asking the council award this to Berezini Contracting in the amount of $56,750 as the low bid for this.
Council?
I'll offer an approving for consent.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Barr?
just one quick question. I want to make sure I understood that. You said we're smelling this product?
No.
Or you're smelling the chlorine?
You're smelling the chlorine.
Yeah,
With this functioning properly, you really won't smell the chlorine.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Any objection to consent? I see none. Audience communication? I see none. Real quick, so is our current version of the system not working? And has it not been working for about a decade?
No, well, if you notice, actually, I mean, I've noticed it's worse right now in the leisure pool than it has been. It doesn't work right now, but just because of the age of the equipment and replacement parts for it. It's getting harder and harder to find those replacement parts. There's plenty of times where I've walked into leisure pool and you smell fresh air. And that's when it's functioning properly. When it's the difference between the lap pool right now and the leisure pool. The lap pool has a functioning UV system, and the air quality is much better in the lap pool than is the leisure pool.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just like to say I will be there tomorrow around 6:30, so I'll take a test for myself.
Okay, good.
All right. Well, Mr. Donovic will report back on his smell test. We'll move on to item 19, or excuse me, item 18.
18.
From award of bid from Parks and Rec for the spa UV unit replacement at the Kirksey Rec Center from budgeted funds.
This is actually the same unit just for the spa. It's a smaller body of water, but the chlorine concentration is much higher. Aquatic Source actually pulled their bid, so Berezini Contracting is the only bid. We're asking the council award this in the amount of $31,810.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Toy?
I'm going to ask for an approving. Do we have to have a smell test on this one too, or no? Yeah, we do.
Is that for consent, Ms. Toy?
Yes, please.
Any objections from the council? Any audience communication? I see none for either. You have a consent
Thank you very
approving.
much.
Item 19, award of bid from, oh, Mr. Davis, you're done. Should we celebrate and throw you a party? or-
Come back.
You're like a fixture. I guess we'll see you next year. You got all your items done. Item number 19 is an award of bid from Public Works and the second act, Mr. Rushlow, for the Silver Village roof replacement from budgeted funds. Good evening, sir.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. Jacob Rushlow, the Assistant Director of Public Works. Yeah, this construction contract is for the replacement of the existing roof systems at the Silver Village Apartments. This was publicly bid through the Mitten system on BidNet, and bids were opened on April 5th, 2022. The lowest qualified bid was submitted by KJP Roofing, and it's our recommendation through the department that council proceed to award a construction contract to KJP for this project in an amount not to exceed $557,634 from budgeted funds.
Mr. President.
Mr. Donovic.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Rushlow, if this is approved, when would construction commence?
That's something that we'll need to sit down with the contractor to get together once we have the notice of award to them and contract signed. Then the first thing we'll be doing with them in a pre-construction meeting will be asking for that schedule of when that will start and when they anticipate completing the project.
Okay, and then, again, maybe the same answer. How long do you think this project would take? Is it a month? Is it 2 weeks?
Yeah, exactly. Again, something we'll need to work out with,
Okay.
with the contractor to, and I'm sure, like a lot of things, it's gonna depend a lot on availability of materials.
And is this price, this will be a fixed price regardless of the change in prices?
Correct, yeah, there's no, if, you know, they've been on this project now in April. If prices go up 20% by August, they're still locked into the same price.
I'd like to offer an approving on consent if there's no objection.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. McCullough, then Ms. Toy.
Through the chair to Mr. Russell, just a quick question. I'm sure it's in the packet, but is this a dimensional shingle?
It is, yes, correct.
Probably a third. What's the warranty on these things now, 40 or 50?
I think this particular one had 40.
Cool. You know, this roof definitely needs it. Well done.
Thank you.
Ms. Toy.
Thank you. Mr. Rushlow, if I may, through the chair, when you say you don't know of the time sequence of this, how will those residents be notified? Are you gonna just give them a letter or pretty much, I mean, paper letter, because a lot of them don't do computers?
Right,
Yeah.
yeah. We'll be working with the housing department to notify residents ahead of time. And the way we set up the bid documents was such that the contractor understands they're only to work on one building at a time.
Okay.
And once they start that building, they have to complete 100%, everything's done, wrapped up before they move on to the next apartment building to complete all of those in that sequential order.
Perfect, because, you know, they'll ring our phone if they don't have clear answers or no direction, if you know what I'm saying. Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
You're
Chair.
welcome.
We have an approving for consent. Any objections from the council? Any audience communication? None for either. We'll move on to item 20, an award of contract from DPW for parking, athletic, and street light electrical maintenance and general electric maintenance at all city buildings and facilities from April 1, 2022 through March 31, 2024, with an option for a third-year extension from budgeted funds. Mr. Rushlow?
Yes, thank you again. This item is really essentially a supplemental electrical maintenance service contract. It includes lights on parking lots, athletic fields, and street lights along Plymouth Road, as well as general electrical maintenance, as you had mentioned, on all city buildings and facilities. 2-year contract with an option for a 1-year extension. This again was publicly bid through the Mitten bid process on BidNet. Bids were opened on March 29th, 2022. For this project, there was only one bid submitted, and that was from RCI Electric. RCI has been our go-to as-needed general electric service contractor since about 2011 for us, and most recently that was in 2018 then when they received that contract. So it's our recommendation that council proceed to award a contract to RCI Electric in an amount not to exceed $291,975 annually from budgeted funds.
Mr. McCullough?
Thank you, Council President. Through the chair to Mr. Rushell, just a quick question. I'm looking at the items. You have estimated quantities. We're not required by no means. Is that just unit pricing, or are we?
No, that really is unit pricing. It's-
Okay.
this
So
is not-
even if we only had two, we're good?
Yep.
No, everything that looks in line, I'll offer an approving on consent.
Any objection to consent? I see none. Audience communication, I see none. We'll move on to 21. An award of contract from DPW for the city's 2022-2023 Vegetation Control Program from budgeted funds. Mr. Rushlow?
Thank you once again. This item for vegetation control was split up into 5 different types or locations of projects. It includes major road medians or boulevards, city buildings, athletic fields, the I-96 and Schoolcraft fence line, and lastly, stormwater ponds that are under the city's responsibility for maintenance. This would be a 2-year contract. Again, was publicly bid through the Mitten process on BidNet. And those 5 divisions of work were specified individually in the bids. Bids were open again on March 29th, and 3 bids were received for this project. To ensure that the city receives the most benefit at the most efficient cost, we recommend awarding 2 contractors different portions of those 5 areas of work. It's our recommendation that through the department that council proceed to award a contract first to True Green for vegetation control at city buildings, athletic fields, and major road medians in an amount not to exceed $29,025.08 annually from budgeted funds. And then secondly, award a contract to Green World for vegetation control along the I-96 Schoolcraft fence line and the stormwater ponds under city's responsibility in an amount not to exceed $10,500 annually, also from budgeted funds.
Council?
Good idea.
Ms. Toy?
Thank you. I'll offer an approving. I think that's a terrific idea, Mr. Rushell. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any objection to consent on that from the council? I see none. Audience communication, I see none. We'll move on to 22, request to approve a resolution from DPW to declare that the city of Livonia will not be responsible for paying GLWA for City of Highland Park's water debt. Mr.
Thank you.
Rushlow.
And DPW had asked to be placed on the agenda. I'm going to let Ms. Thomas speak a little bit on this, since the items in your packet had come from the administration.
Thank you. Council, the administration is seeking your approval of a proposed resolution permitting the city to withhold a portion of our payments to the Great Lakes Water Authority. That portion withheld is the portion being used to pay GLWA for accumulated debt owed by the city of Highland Park due to unpaid bills over a 10-year period. I'm happy to answer any questions council may have.
Mr. Barr.
I just want to thank the administration for bringing this to us. A few weeks ago, I'd actually begun asking questions myself about what we were going to do about this and found out that the administration was working on it. So thank you for your proactivity on that. Liz, I know this situation, I feel like I probably know as much, if not more, than most average citizens about it, but probably all of us do because we're interested in this kind of thing. Even that being said, I recognize there's complexities here that we can't begin to cover tonight. You know, we could have interesting conversations and debates as to what ought to be done about this, but one principle is absolutely clear to me, is that you shouldn't get something that you're not paying for. And corollary to that is you shouldn't ask other communities to pay for something that another community is not paying for. So that part of this is simple, and I absolutely support this. I'd offer it approving for consent if there's no objection.
Mr. Donovic.
Thank you, Mr. President. I concur with Councilman Barr's point of view on this. I think it is unfair and just not right for the citizens of Livonia to pay $378,400 since 2012 of another community's water bill. We have our own bills to pay, and thankful to our city for doing a good job in budgeting and making sure that our bills are paid. It is just, it is not right for our residents to have to pay someone else's bills. I'm very happy to see the administration's pushing this forward. I'd like to also note that our County Commissioner, Terry Marecki, has been working hard on this, and she's been communicating with members of the council to bring this item forward. And it's my hope that it is resolved somehow, but we're not sure how that will be resolved. But one thing is for sure, the residents of our city should not have to pay the bills for another community. Thank you, Ms. Thomas.
Yeah, if I, for a moment here, like that's, I mean, just to clarify here, it's not the city who would be paying this. It would be the residents paying through the city.
That is
And
correct.
that's an absolute horrible thing to put on our residents.
Yes.
And we would be doing a disservice to our residents and anybody who draws and uses our water residentially or commercially if we did not object to this. So thank you very much to all parties who worked on this. We have an approving for consent. Mr. Rushlow, you said something about putting this on the agenda. Were you seeking to have this as a regular agenda item or no?
Hi, I'll give you, no, I was just simply stating the item as it was placed on the agenda 2 weeks ago prior to the deadline was done so by the Department of Public Works, but the information in the packets was through the administration, so wanted to have them the opportunity to speak on the topic. That's all.
Thank you, sir. So we have consent. Mr. McCullough?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to clarify too, not to piggyback on anything that hasn't been said, but also part of this resolution does point out, number 4 in the resolution, we are asking the state of Michigan to reimburse the city of Livonia for the $378,400 that has been paid towards the debt.
Good luck.
I'm not sure, as my colleague Ms. Toy would, laughing about it, but that is also, and this would obviously be a cease and desist from not paying any further money This has been the longest 3 to 4 days since 2012 from the repairs that were supposed to be fixed, and I'm happy that we're getting out of this. So thank you.
Okay, we have for consent, no objections from the council. I see no audience communication in regards to this item. We will move on to item 23.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. 23 is a request to accept stormwater facilities maintenance agreement from the engineering division from Jolly Road Properties LLC in conjunction with the construction of a storm drain system that provides adequate drainage for property developed on the east side of Hubbard Avenue, north of Plymouth Road, in the southeast quarter of Section 27. I'll note for the record, I have no affiliation with Jolly Road Properties LLC. Is this going to be Mr. Zielinski?
Good evening, Council President. I'm glad you don't have to step aside tonight. You know, we want full council here tonight, but this is just a maintenance agreement, stormwater agreement that we have, housekeeping issue along with the next two. Just asking for your approval for us to go ahead and get that executed and then get it recorded at Wayne County and then be maintained by the property owner. If they don't, then obviously we'll have to come in and then tax the property owner, but hopefully that won't occur. Again, it's just a housekeeping issue and look for your approval on this issue. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Council, Ms. Toy?
I'll offer an approving, but I'd also like to ask to Mr. Zielinski if, are you also saying the same, what you call it, the road repair people are also involved in 24 and 25, right?
Those are different.
Those are different.
Different
Okay.
sites, same thing as far as stormwater management systems on the
Yeah,
site.
Okay,
20
okay, because I
24
was
would be the-
hoping we could move the other two at the same time, but I guess we can't.
No, sorry.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, just trying to move the meeting along.
You know, having a jolly road has worked out rather well for the city of Lansing. No. We have a consent for 23, no objection from the council. I see no audience communication. We'll move on to 24. A request to accept stormwater facilities maintenance agreement from engineering from Madonna University in conjunction with the construction of a storm drain system that provides adequate drainage for property developed west of Levan Road on the north side of Schoolcraft Road in the southwest quarter of Section 20. Mr. Zielinski?
Yes, this is in relationship to the Welcome Center that was started a couple years ago. Finally got all the completion of the drawings and stormwater agreement. We're looking to get approval to go ahead and get that recorded. And then, obviously, maintain that in perpetuity. But again, this is in regard to that Welcome Center that was built offset west of Levan, north of Schoolcraft Road. Thank you.
Mr. McCullough?
I'll offer an approving for consent.
Any objection from the council? I see none. Audience communication, I see none. We'll move on to item 25, a request to accept stormwater facilities maintenance agreement from engineering for the Livonia Business Center LLC in conjunction with the construction of a storm drain system that provides adequate drainage for property developed on the east side of Sears Drive, north of Plymouth Road, in the southwest quarter of Section 26. Mr. Zielinski?
Yes, this was previously owned by Roush, and then Ashley Capital took over the facility at the end of the cul-de-sac at Sears Drive. They did some improvements out there and looked to continue on with the improvements to the vacant property to the south. Again, we're just asking for your approval on the stormwater agreement that was prepared. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer any of those. Thank you.
Council?
Mr. President,
Mr. Donovic?
I'd like to offer an approving on consent if there's no objection from my colleagues.
Any objection from the council to consent? I see none. Audience communication, I see none. It's just out of curiosity, is Sears still located on Sears Drive over there, or have they since closed?
I believe they use the Sears name, but it's an outlet for that facility
Sears
itself.
outlet?
They're just
Okay.
using the name just as a
I got you.
lure.
All right, so we have consent there. We'll move on to item 26, a request to waive the formal bidding process and approve the 2022 asphalt road program by extending the contract 20A unit prices with Nagel Paving from engineering for contract 22A in the amount of $4 million. Council Resolution 106-21 referenced.
Yes, good evening, Council President. Again, we bid this out back in 2020, just before the pandemic. Nago was a low bidder at $3,836,000, just over that amount. We then renewed it in 2021, and then tried to facilitate, obviously with the last year, the road program to take advantage of the unit prices that they provided to us. When we went out for bids, they came back in the amount of $4,551,570.30. We then had to pare that down because we had a budget of 3.8, but we want to try to maximize the number of roads that could be fixed as part of the asphalt program. So we set a budget of $4 million, but in doing that, we had to take off some street segments that will not be included as part of the 22A. Those streets would be St. Francis from Bridge to Pembroke, Grimm Avenue, Pickford to N, Maplewood Avenue from Clarita to 7 Mile, and Pickford Avenue from Grimm to East End, and the last one would be Jarvis Avenue on the south end of Plymouth Road. And finally Hathaway from Stark to Farmington. We are hopeful that the first list of segment streets will be done in 2023, and the other two are a little farther away from that. Again, we're trying to do economy of scales. Majority of the work is going to be west of Farmington, south of 7 Mile, and then north of, just south of 8 Mile, east of Farmington, to help maximize the construction budget. Naval has agreed to the terms with a reduced budget of $4 million to complete the work. We're looking for your approval to approve the contract in the amount of $4 million, provided the breakdown for rehab and maintenance with the assistance of OHM with the contract documents. Thank you.
Mr. President,
Mr. Morgan.
I'd like to offer an approving on consent.
I think that's the perfect, thank you, Mr. Morgan. Any objections for consent? I see none. Audience communication, I see none. We'll move on to item 27, a request to amend the contract with OHM Advisors for construction engineering services for the 2022 asphalt road program, contract 22A, from the engineering division for the same, referencing council resolution 336-21. And I'll note, we really pulled one over on Mr. Hiltz here tonight. He was the second item on the study agenda and the second to the last item on a long night. So you get what you deserve, I guess. Mr. Zielinski?
As you know, OHM has been intimately involved with this program since 2002 when we first got approval for the millage, and they have provided excellent service for us. As part of the QBS contracts that was approved last November, we're asking for their assistance on the CE and testing for the road program to make it successful in the amount of $480,000 based on the contract amount of $4 million as part of the QBS contract formula. We have Mark Locke here, obviously, the project manager, and also John Hiltz, the dream team here to help us out if you have any questions. But appreciate your assistance to approve that, as again, we look forward to getting out there in early May, mid-May, to facilitate these road repair program locations with the assistance of OHM Advisors.
Council?
Mr. President,
Mr. Donovic?
I'd, I think I'll offer an approving on consent.
Any objection from the council? Mr. Morgan? No. Audience communication, I see none to either. We'll move on to 28, a request to amend the engineering contract through QBS process with Hubbell, Roth & Clark for engineering services for the MEDC grant, Green Mead Regional Detention Pond from the engineering division for the same, citing council resolution 95-22.
Thank you, Council President. Saving the best for last. As you know, there's been a continuous problem with the storm on certain rain events behind Brenton and Whispering Willow Woods off of Newburgh Road on the Whispering Willows Golf Course. As you know, on heavy rains, there's been some flooding issues on that street and the backyards. We met last fall in the committee, the whole meeting, with the residents in attendance to try to see if we can come up with a solution. We're very pleased that we were able to get $1 million to help in this process. We're looking to coordinate with the Greenmead Master Plan with HRC to facilitate some detention on the golf course, along with detaining some of the property, 130 acres on the west side of Newburgh Road, to facilitate these significant rain events in order to, again, slow the water and do the best we can. Obviously, on heavy rain events, the goal is to slow that water, detain it, and then treat it as best we can before it can be released into the existing enclosed system that's behind the houses and traverses south. But Jack Nagel is here from HRC. He's be leading the design for this and looking forward to working with their team to come up with a permanent solution and hopefully be completed in 2023. Thank you.
All right, Mr. McCullough, be chair.
I'd be happy to offer an approving on consent. I do have one question, if I may, through the chair to Mr. Zalinsik. The other two projects that were part of that grant, do you foresee those starting this year?
Yes, so,
Believe we have
we're
them.
trying to get a proposal for the Bell Creek Court issue, whatever, working with OHM advisors on that. And then obviously Doug Moore is working with the ARC to facilitate the drain, the Denmark drain. So
Perfect.
as soon as we got approval, we're trying to move forward with
Love
these contracts. So we're hoping to bring OHMs here in a little bit.
Looking forward to those agenda items. Thank you.
Mr. Barr?
Yeah, Todd, just in reviewing the packet on this, one thing that just caught my eye, I obviously remember that committee meeting where we talked about this, but I noticed in there that it said a 2015 study revealed the need for this. And I just didn't remember us talking about that in the committee meeting, that a study had already been done on this. Can you help me understand what that was?
It was just a minor, just brief summary that was requested back in 2015 as far as putting a mini detention pond in front of the existing grate where the water was collected. The problem was trying to find funding and then construct it at the appropriate time. That was the big thing, was funding issue. So it was never mentioned because obviously it was a small portion of the overall impact to try to alleviate some issues with that immediate drain.
I also noticed that that study talked about, back then, mentioned possibly putting a detention pond west of the post office.
Correct, but
Is that still, I mean, has there been some work, is it likely to be a potential location for this, or?
yes, we believe the culvert, I believe on the Newburgh Road is 36 inches, and the goal is to try to find the best location based on the low point elevation behind the postal service and to improve the drainage ditches along that corridor on Greenmead property to facilitate that with the master plan.
I was excited, I mean, I don't remember that coming up in our committee meeting, and if it works out for it to go there, that alleviates a lot of the potential concerns logistically about where else some of the other places we had talked about, the Greenmead property. Leads me to another question. That whole woods west of the post office, is that city property currently? Do you know?
Yes, but obviously, we want to leave the trees, as you are aware, in place and not impact that location. Look at the soils. They're here to take some soil borings, look at the percolation of the ground and figure out the best place to facilitate the detention area. But the goal is not to touch that, obviously. We want to make sure that that stays intact.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so just a brief comment on this. I think this is an example of government being responsive, right? And I think when we initially had this committee meeting that Mr. Barr was referencing, I don't think we really had an idea where the funding for this would come from. But through a collaboration with the state legislature and our representation there, that was found. But I'll also note, Mr. Barr, Mr. McCullough, and I are also on the Greenmead Master Planning Committee. So I am curious from that perspective how this will impact the park as well. And it would be great if we could find a way that this would be an added feature for the park as well, if there is a parameter for that. So with that being said, we have a consent approving. I don't see any objections from the council. I don't see any audience communication here. That concludes our scheduled agenda for this evening.
Too bad.
Any announcements from the council? Any closing audience communication? I see none for either. It's with pleasure that I will call this meeting closed. Thank you.